Hey guys, I'm back to read chapter 10 of Lily to the Rescue. Remember, in chapter 9, the kitten that Casey helped save that was up in the tree, her family came to get her. Okay? Chapter 10. Casey came back that afternoon and we waited in the yard together for Maggie Rose to quit being at a place called school and come play with us. When the gate finally opened and my girl came in, I raced around the yard in a frenzy of joy. Casey flew right up and landed on my girl's outstretched hand. Lily? Can you say Lily, Casey? Lily? Maggie Rose asked. That again. I went to Maggie Rose and did a very good sit, thinking if I were the best dog I could be, we could end this crazy behavior. Casey flew over and landed on my head. I felt him up there, so I held very still. My girl giggled so hard she sat on the ground. I wagged. Whatever we were doing was making Maggie Rose so happy she couldn't even stand up. Do you want to go on a picnic, Lily? Maggie Rose asked. I had learned that picnic meant that we would go to the dog park and sit on a blanket, and Maggie Rose would give me treats out of a basket. I very much liked doing picnic. It turned out that Casey liked picnics too. He came along to the dog park and flew right down to land on the blanket with us. Boggs the dog came running over to see us too, and Casey wisely flew up in the tree so that Boggs wouldn't sit on him. I was friendly to Boggs, but I watched him closely as he sniffed at the basket with the food in it. Those were not his treats in there. I could smell my treats, my girl's snack, and peanuts for Casey. Maggie Rose called Boggs a good dog, which to me meant that she had forgotten about Boggs sitting in the water bowl. Sitting in a water bowl is bad dog behavior and is the sort of thing a dog would never forget. Boggs ran off to do whatever he was doing, and my girl reached into the basket for the treats. Yes, she had a loop of flashy metal on her wrist. Dangling off this circle of wire were very small dog tags that glittered in the sun. Casey found the thing fascinating, and he flew down from the tree to sit close to my girl and stare at the dangling dog tags, twisting his head from side to side. You really like my charm bracelet, don't you, Casey? Maggie Rose asked him. When Maggie Rose held out her wrist, Casey pecked cautiously at the dangling things. Here's a peanut, my girl said. I wagged so that the whole give a treat thing would continue, but hopefully with something other than peanuts. Casey took the peanut, which was fine by me. Lily? Can you say Lily, Casey? Maggie Rose held out a peanut, the dog tags on her wrist glinting. Casey pecked at the flashing metal and took the peanut. Lily? Maggie Rose repeated. I was Lily, and I was right there waiting for my treat. Finally, my girl gave me one. It tasted like dried fish. I wagged because when Maggie Rose handed me a treat, it meant she loved me. I was her dog and she was my girl, and Casey was our crow. As I was eating my treat, Casey flew away to peck at the ground. He came back to our blanket with something in his beak. It was a small, glittery object, a lot like what was hanging from Maggie Rose's wrist. Oh my gosh, Maggie Rose exclaimed. You found a charm, Casey. Thank you so much. Maggie Rose took whatever it was from Casey's beak. It did not look much like food to me, and so I sat patiently waiting for the topic of treats to come up. My girl fussed with this new shiny thing and then held out her arm. The object Casey had found was now dangling from the loop of flashy wire on her wrist. Look, she said. I wagged, not understanding, but happy anyway. Maggie Rose reached into the small basket next to her legs and pulled out a peanut. Here, Casey, she said, you deserve a reward for bringing me a charm. Casey took the peanut with his beak and then flew up in the trees to eat it. He dropped the shells, which I found interesting. The few times I had tried to eat peanuts, I crunched them up, shells and all. Then little bits of what tasted like wood sat on my tongue until I went to the water bowl, sniffed to make sure Boggs hadn't been sitting in it, and then lapped up as much as I could drink. But Casey knew how to open the shells. A few days later, we did picnic again. This time I noticed there were several crows in the trees. None of them came down to see us, except Casey, of course. And Casey had something in his mouth. Maggie Rose laughed as she accepted it from him. Why, Casey, this is so nice of you. It isn't really a charm, it's a dime. But you deserve a reward just the same. Maggie Rose gave Casey another peanut, and he flew up in the trees. Some of the crows made noises at him. Crows cannot bark. They can only make a loud call that probably is their way of saying they wish they could be dogs. A little while later, Casey returned with yet another glittery object. Maggie Rose laughed and clapped her hands. Casey, she said, this is wonderful. Let's see what you've got here. Oh, you brought me a tiny bell from a cat collar. This could make a very noisy charm, so I won't wear it, but it's beautiful just the same. Here, Casey. And Maggie Rose handed over another peanut from the basket. Casey looked at me, perhaps to see if I wanted it, but I was waiting for a piece of cheese and had no interest in crow treats. After cheese, I played Chase the Brown Dog with a dog named Pete, and then several dogs played Chase Lily, She Has the Ball with me. I drank more water and then plopped down next to my girl, who was eating an apple and holding an object called a book. A book is a dry thing that my girl often stared at as if it were about to come alive and run around. I chewed up a few of them when I was a puppy, and I found that they tasted even worse than peanut shells. So now I flopped on my back, my legs in the air, thinking that doing a half rollover would earn me another piece of cheese, but Maggie Rose didn't even notice. She never looked up from her book until Casey flew down with something in his mouth, another small, glittery object. A bottle cap, Maggie Rose exclaimed. She gave Casey a peanut. I found the whole process boring, but I stayed on the blanket because I smelled a wonderful slice of meat in a sandwich in the basket. And then something very alarming happened. When Casey flew up into the tree to drop his peanut shells, another crow landed on our blanket. Maggie Rose and I held very, very still. And that's the end of chapter 10. Why did Casey keep bringing Maggie Rose small glittery objects? And at the end of the chapter, why did a new crow come now? Think about that, and I'll be back with chapter 11 next time.